sun is up over central Virginia skies. Hanover moving and the city's alive. One more hour to own this town. WRVA, never slowing down. Wake up rich and win the day. Or spend the whole day playing catch up anyway. Richmond's morning news keeps you running strong. 9 a.m. Let's roll all morning long.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning. It is 9:03 here on News Radio WRVA. I'm Rich Herrera. This is the Voice of Virginia. It's Richmond's Morning News. We have the honor of being able to talk with Governor Jim Gilmore, two different sections of the program, and I want to turn our attention to what's going on in the Middle East, get his thoughts as a former U.S. ambassador. Sir, I've said this about the people that are talking about this today. Not many of them have ever negotiated a deal such as this. Not many people in the world have ever negotiated a deal like this. I've had an opportunity to negotiate $1 million deals. You as the chief executive of the Commonwealth of Virginia, you as the governor of Virginia, you've been involved in high-powered negotiations. Wanted to get your thoughts on this MOU.
Well, I've read the MOU, and it gives the Iranians an awful lot of things. Look, let's look at where your listeners think that the U.S. needs to be. The U.S. needs to get the Strait of Hormuz open and traffic moving through that body of water, so that the international oil markets will stabilize. And if they stabilize, that means that the producers of gasoline will be able to look ahead more favorably and therefore lower gas rates. That's the theory that Trump is working under. He's trying to solve that problem because, well, he's got a political problem. This is an election year. It's a federal election year, and gas prices are incredibly high. That's what he's attempting to do with this memorandum of understanding. And the second issue that's addressed in the memo is the nuclear business. There's a positive statement by the Iranians. They will not try to acquire a nuclear weapon. And that's what President Trump has been negotiating for. So superficially, that's fine. There are a lot of things as a lawyer I can look at and wonder about a little bit. For one thing, the agreement only says that Iran will allow that traffic through the strait with no charges for only 60 more days, while the rest of the deal is developing. That ain't so great, because that almost implies that Iran now controls the waterway for the future, forever. And that's not so great. That means they can kind of continue to come back and use that leverage against not just the United States, but the rest of the world forever. And that gives a lot of strength to Iran. The issue of nuclear, yes, so the president was negotiating to get them to agree not to have a nuclear weapon. But, they don't really have to abide by that in the long term. I think we're looking at a challenge here that can go on for 10, 5, 20 years. And over that period of time, things can alter a great deal. I'm concerned about it. I think, frankly, if I were saying something to your listeners, it would be stay tuned and let's see how this develops. Because I don't think that the memo resolves a lot of things. I think that it points a direction that the U.S. wants to go. By the way, as Senator Kaine said, there's an awful lot that goes back the other way. There's an unfreezing of sanctions, which has been one of the main leverage points that we have had. That would disappear under this memo, and that is something we have to pay first. We have to eliminate the sanctions first before any of the rest of this develops. That's a problem, because that, once again, releases the Iranians from pressure. And that's a realistic issue. In short, I think that to get the deal in principle, the Iranians have a lot of loopholes here. And I think that we need to watch and see how this develops. At the end of the day, I think the U.S. may end up back on the battlefield, but that's not what the agreement says. The agreement says that there's going to be a peace between these folks. One more point I'll make, then I'll stop. And that is that there's an agreement that Lebanon's sovereignty is going to be maintained. And the question is, for Israel's point of view, does that mean they get to go and defend themselves against Hezbollah, which is located in Lebanon? The Israelis, I think, have denounced the agreement because their duty is to do what they've always done, which is to protect themselves. So this is a very complicated matter. I would suggest that this is step one, not step end on this discussion.
100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. This is the off ramp to get to where you want to get to. And I'll remind everybody as you brought up the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is not a signatory towards any international maritime law. In fact, they're one of the few countries that doesn't sign on to maritime law. That's according to USMS Admiral Jack Wadden, who came on the program with us about a month ago, saying that Iran actually doesn't abide by any of our maritime laws because they didn't sign up for any of them. I think the big point that you're making is, I agree, this is very incomplete, but this is the off ramp, and we don't know what the final resolution or the final instrument of peace will be between the United States and Iran. And there's a lot more work to be done. But sir, the way I hear you describe it, my thoughts are this is the off ramp to get there. This isn't the final destination. This isn't the book. This isn't what you'll frame and put up on the wall. This is just to get you to that off ramp. Because the way I look at it, sir, the Democrats in Congress have been asking to end this war immediately through the War Powers Act resolutions. They keep bringing up 7, 8 of them they put through. And for the folks that say, no, this isn't enough, well, what's your alternative? If you bomb them this bad, and then the very next step, sir, you remember, he said, all right, then we're going to have to take out the power plants. People started screaming, well, that's human right abuses, and nobody wants to see boots in the ground over there. So do you want to stop, or do you want to go? You can't just sit there in the middle and not finish this thing one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to successfully be an off ramp. If it's an off ramp, it's an off ramp to a street that we necessarily don't want to be on. Mm-hmm. So again, but look, I want to give the administration all this latitude here. They've got to still work this thing out. They don't want to be in the war, and I think when they telegraphed that at the beginning, they gave the Iranians an awful lot of leverage. And now this memorandum of understanding reveals that leverage. So I think that the administration has more work to do to bring this out correctly. And again, as I've been saying on your show for a long time, keep an eye on both Europe and the Pacific. Both the Russians and the Chinese are watching this and trying to see how the Americans are going to resolve this. So once again, this is only a piece of a much bigger picture that I've been looking at for years.
Well, the other part of this is, and I'm going to segue into Russia and Ukraine, which is something that you've been keeping an eye on for the longest time. This also takes another piece of China's power off the table, because China was able to buy Venezuelan oil at a discounted price through the Ghost Fleet. That's been eliminated. They've been able to buy Iranian oil through a cheaper price, $20 a barrel less than everybody else pays through the Ghost Fleet. Now that Iran will be coming back in and being able to sell it in the international market, there goes another piece of Chinese advantage they have over the rest of the world. This actually hurts China more than it does anybody else, which brings us back over to Europe. With Donald Trump being there at the G7, the European leaders seem like they understand that there is something going on. It's a bigger picture than just the Ukraine war, Venezuela, China, Cuba. All of this is intermingled. And now you really see how the Ukrainians have stood steadfast, and they're actually pushing back. And Putin, you're starting to see people, is the war injured and the war dead, are now being found out more and more by the Russian people. People are starting to grow frustrated with Vladimir Putin in some of the reports that I've seen.
And as I've been saying I think, look, Ukraine is not going to lose. They're going to win this war. They've already won it because the goal of the Russians was to conquer and completely eliminate the nation of Ukraine, which is, of course, a war crime. And they're not going to be able to do that.
Can I interrupt you for a sir? Can I interrupt you for just a second? Mm-hmm. Why can't they win?
They can't win because the Ukrainians have held out, because they've developed their drone warfare. They're actually the leading country in the world now in drone warfare. And they are manufacturing millions of them, and they're doing it without the United States' help. They're on their way now to do what they have to do to resist the Russians. Now, they've also, by the way, started to cut off Crimea, which was an interesting thing. All of us, or not me, but many others have been writing off Crimea as a done deal for years. The Ukrainians aren't agreeing to that. So they're actually isolating the Crimea. And this is going to give them leverage over any new negotiations. But ultimately, I think that the Russians are not going to be able to sustain this war. Their population doesn't permit it. They're losing people by the tens of thousands every month. And they're not going to be able to do it. But I do believe there needs to be accountability to Putin. What he has done is a tremendous historic crime. And if he is brought to accountability, the Chinese will notice that too. And by the way, if the Iranians are able to control the Strait of Hormuz, either under this agreement after the expiration of 60 days or not, the Chinese may be encouraged to say the same thing about the Taiwan Strait, which a lot of stuff goes through that Taiwan Strait between mainland China and Taiwan. So again, all of it interlinks together, Rich. And I don't think this phone call this morning, we can say that we have resolved a lot of things. I think this is going to go on for a while and can be really earth changing. And it's going to require real American leadership. And in my view, we need to restore our relations with our allies. That's been my position since I returned from Vienna.
Absolutely. I thought I saw some thawing of this with the European G7 members of the G7 with Donald Trump there. It seemed like, I mean, having Macron say, hey, why don't you stay an extra day and have dinner with us at the Palace of Versailles was something I don't think I would have seen 6 months ago.
Well, the Europeans still need the United States. They may say they can go their own way. Canada may say they can go their own way. But the fact is the United States is still the big boy on the block,
right,
in terms of our economics and our military and everything else. The question is American statecraft, what we can do to work with our allies to try to bring us out of this conflict that we're in a favorable way. So if he's over there doing that kind of diplomacy, that's still backtracking a little bit from all this hostility. But in the end, I think that's a good thing to do to keep us working with our allies, particularly the French and the British.
And again, this international drama continues, and we'll check in with you next week and see where we go. But there's seriously some big movement this week with this memo of understanding, the G7, the real first time we're seeing Russia admit that things are not going well in their special military operation, and the people in Russia putting pressure on Vladimir Putin. We'll see what comes of that when we get together next week. Sir, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks for the chance to talk about these topics with your listeners, Rich.
Absolutely. Governor Jim Gilmore joins us here every Thursday on News Radio WRVA. All right, today's program brought to you in part by GreerFinancialGroup.com. Man, like we said, the drama going on internationally. What about the drama in your household? How much money do we put aside? Do we have this investment, that investment?